You will not believe what almost happened to me on a night that should have been just another boring shift but turned into a memory that still makes my heart race, and this is Nightmare Vault, and I swear, what I am about to tell you is something that crawled back from the darkest corners of my past. When I was 17, stuck working a miserable summer job at a filthy pizza shop on the edge of my dead-end hometown, with sticky floors, a terrible boss named Russell, and even worse, pizza play so bad customers only ordered by mistake, and most nights I would stand around folding boxes. But the weird part was the instructions stapled to the box. They said park behind the house, walk through the backyard, and knock on the back door only, and even though that sounded strange, my 17-year-old brain thought maybe they had a sleeping baby or a broken front door, or was way outside our usual zone, and we hardly ever got orders for olives. But Russell, who barely looked up from his phone, told me to take it since we had not had a single delivery in over an hour. And when the curtain in the little window moved just the slightest twitch, like a finger brushed against it, as more officers appeared moving like shadows, flashlights in hand, silent as they circled the house, and one of them tried the door handle gently. And when I complained about my manager flipping out, he just gave me a look that told me it was serious and walked away, and still no one answered. And that is when two dark, unmarked cars pulled up. So I grabbed the pizza, punched the address into my phone, and headed out. It was one of those summer nights where all I could think about was how close I had come to something terrible, and how if the cops had not shown up when they did, something horrifying might have happened. And that night stayed with me, haunting me and praying for the shift too. And when one night a strange saying, he kept hearing scratching in his room, and I told my wife to wait and followed him downstairs, thinking maybe it was just the house settling or something harmless. I heard its slow, deep human breathing coming from inside the wall, and I jumped back without meaning to, and before I could even speak, the most guttural, angry scream I have ever heard exploded from, and we stood there by his bed in silence listening. And at first I heard nothing. Little place, 1 block from the boardwalk, with a back deck that had a view of the ocean, and I tried to forget. There was another night, another nightmare that I would never be able to forget, because up in my arms, not even letting him open his eyes, and bolted for the stairs, yelling for my wife, and just as we reached the top of it, man came charging down the hallway behind online order, came in for a large sausage and olive pizza, and I almost rejected it because the delivery addressed something across the glass, pounding and trying to break through while I pressed my body against it, yelling for my wife to take the any other summer memory. But ended in a way I still cannot explain, and it all started when I was 16. Growing up in a rural area where you could ride your bike for miles without seeing another soul, a place where summer felt like freedom and isolation blended together, like I had my own secret world away kids. And colder than I dared, one night in July, we decided to go stargazing, a tradition we had shared many times, and when I opened them, Taylor was gone, not like she had wandered off to pee or check her phone, but completely gone. Her bike gone too, and mine still sitting there next where the stars burned brighter and the world felt ours. And after biking for what felt like forever, Taylor stopped suddenly in the middle of an empty field, no fences, and I pulled out my phone to check the time. And it was exactly 3 a.m. a time stamp burned into my brain forever, because it had been just after midnight. I went straight to bed hoping it was all some weird misunderstanding, but the next morning when I texted Taylor a few minutes ago, and now suddenly 3 hours had vanished. And even though I knew I had not fallen asleep, I started doubting. No houses, nothing but open sky and grass, and we spread out I never even knew existed, where that man had been living for months, watching us, waiting, and we never noticed it. And when I told her everything, she swore the same thing had happened to her, that she had been the one who woke up alone. You think this story is over? Just wait, because the shadows are always watching, and sometimes they reach out to remind you that they are real. So like and subscribe for more true horror from Nightmare Vault. And eventually we stopped talking about it, but the fear never left me, the feeling that something out there at 3 a.m. with me gone, and she had waited for over an hour before leaving, thinking I had ditched her, and neither of us had any messages. I looked at the stars, I felt it again, that creeping chill that maybe I had touched something that was never meant to be touched. And sometimes late at night, when the world is quiet and the stars are out, I catch myself looking up, half expecting to disappear again. And even though years have passed, the terror remains sharp in my mind, because some nightmares never end. And this is Nightmare Vault, reminding. And even though life went back to normal on the surface, deep down I knew things would never be the same, and or missed calls, even though we'd differently. And I never heard from Taylor again. After that summer we laughed, shouted, and made wishes. Neither of us would remember the kind of perfect night that made you forget the world. But me, my wife, and our 2 boys, 7 and 5, we would spend weekends there, playing on the beach, riding bikes, making memories. It felt like a gift, something special my dad left for us, and I loved it. But one summer night, space shutting off every entrance, I could never forget the sight of him slamming into that door like a wild animal trying to tear his way, but nothing answered. In that moment the entire world felt wrong. The stars dimmed, the air grew cold, not like a breeze, but like the entire field had shifted, like I had stepped into him and dragging him away. And later when they searched the house, they found, still cannot fully understand. And if you think this is where the nightmare ends, you are wrong, because Nightmare Vault has more, and the darkest part is yet to come. You have no idea how terrifying things can get until you experience something that shatters everything you believe about safety and reality. and I figured why not? It would at least kill some time. A row of dark houses, no lights, no cars, nothing but shadows and overgrown yards, and the house. The boys had passed out after a long day in the sun, and my wife and I were sitting on the deck sipping wine and playing cards, when Jordan, something else totally harmless, and honestly all I could think about was how slow the night had been and how much worse it would feel if I stayed folding boxes. The air felt like soup, thick, humid and still, and the sour smell of wet dirt and plastic hung in the air. And after a long silent drive, where the houses got fewer and the streets darker, I finally reached the address. The GPS led me down this narrow, shadowy street that ran behind. I needed. It looked totally abandoned, with a sagging fence, tall grass and no lights. But I followed the instructions, parked on the gravel shoulder, grabbed the pizza and walked toward the back door, flashlight in one hand, pizza in the other. I knocked once, nothing. Knocked again, silenced, and I was about to knock a third time. Behind mine, headlights off, engines running, and a man stepped out flashing a badge and quietly told me to get back in my car and wait, and I did. Hot pounding, it did not open. He backed off, and I sat there watching, feeling like I was seeing something I was never supposed to see. And then the officer came back to my window, asked to see the order, and after glancing at the address and phone number on the app, told me to leave immediately. And even though the whole ride back, every time I thought about how easily it could have gone wrong, and even though a few years later when my dad passed away, he left us a small old beach house in Delaware. Nothing fancy, just a quiet. It became our summer escape. Everything changed. It was a quiet mid-July evening. My older son came outside looking pale and nervous, but then faint, soft scratching low near the baseboards, not the ceiling or walls. And when I crouched down to listen closer behind the wall, and I grabbed Jordan and ran straight to get my younger son, scooping him, screaming, and I barely managed to slam the sliding glass door shut before he smashed into it, clawing and shrieking like an animal, smearing police and cheated, grabbing them and covering their ears as I stared into his wild, unhinged eyes, praying the door would hold, until finally the police arrived, bursting into the house, tackling a hidden crawl space under the back porch, leading to a panel in Jordan's closet, a space missing food. The strange noises, nothing, and even after sealing the crawl through to my family. And it still haunts me every time I think about how close we came to something. This is Nightmare Vault, and what happened after those horrifying nights still sends chills down my spine. Because just when I thought life had settled back to normal after sealing the crawl space and moving past the memories of that filthy man clawing at our door, something even more disturbing took place. A story that began like from everything, a world where the nights felt endless and the darkness wrapped around. You're like a friend in that summer. My best friend was Taylor, a girl who always pushed the limits just a little bit further. Before, just the two of us, 2 bikes and a bottle of cheap wine, looking for a new spot past the edge of town. A blanket, popped the cork and lay there staring up, pointing at constellations, laughing and waiting for a shooting star. And when we finally saw one, it felt like magic. Then something happened, something so strange, so unsettling, it changed everything. I remember closing my eyes for just a second, just long enough to feel the cool breeze on my face to me, and my heart dropped because it made no sense. I stood up, spun around, called her name over and over. A version of reality that was off by some unseeable margin, everything, even my own senses. I tried calling Taylor, no answer, and after a while I gave up, grabbed my bike and pedaled home, faster than I ever had before. And when I got there, she flipped on me, demanding to know where I had gone. Both remembered trying to reach each other, and none of it made any sense. We argued, circled around the details, but nothing added up. No gaps, no blackouts, just this impossible split in reality. Something beyond our understanding had played with us that night, and for months every time. To this day, I have no explanation for what happened, no way to make sense of how 2 people could experience the exact same impossible event and remember it completely. But I know in my heart she remembers too. That some stories are meant to stay in the dark. But we are here to bring them into the light, and if